You all are.
Yeah, you have to get your ears cleaned out to see how they do it.
Hi, welcome. Yeah, I learned how to do it. So this. Yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone here and everyone on the Zoom. We have a big Zoom audience too, so it's great to see all of you guys here and all of you guys there. Yeah, this is part of an ongoing series of kind of oral history / conversations that Jeff and I at the SFAI Archives are doing along with SFAA, the SFAI Alumni Group. So one of many, a lot of times they're just virtual, but this one is also in person, which is great. And all of these are being recorded. So you can watch them on the SFAA YouTube channel. And it's a collection of all of these memories from SFAI alumni, former faculty members, a great series of recordings. So we were so happy that Erin reached out and wanted to host one here in person. And I'm so happy this panel came together. This is going to be great. So thank you so much for having us, Erin.
Thank you. Thanks for, yeah. I just saw that they were doing these events virtually, and we have this big empty space, and we like to do a lot of events here. And I was like, why not do one here? And so I'm glad this is happening here. So this particular talk is about people who went to SFAI and started art spaces. This is just or art projects. This is just a smattering of the many people who have done it. We saw the picture on the flyer that was in the building where Margaret Tedesco had second floor projects. Bass and Rayner and Minnesota Street Projects is also SFAI students. Romer Young, the couple that runs that, both went to SFAI. I just want to take a second. Can anybody name some other spaces that were started by SFAI people or projects, whether they were long-term or brief?
Royal Nunsuch.
Royal Nunsuch, fantastic space. Yeah, it used to be in Oakland on Telegraph.
Off space?
Off space? Where's off space?
It wasn't. It was a nomadic thing.
Yeah.
12 years.
Awesome.
The MacArthur the art.
MacArthur v. Arthur, Kevin Clark's space, the first place that Jackie and I started curating together. We miss Kevin dearly.
Still thriving Root Division.
Root Division. I didn't know it was started by art SFAI people.
Absolutely.
Right.
It was a graduate class
For life.
that started it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Langdon?
Say again?
Langdon Art.
Yeah.
New LinkedIn?
No, Langdon Art. Or New Langdon.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. It would come ahead.
ATA?
What about? Yeah.
Ancient history, the Sixth Gallery.
The $6. Where was that?
The SFAI Boulder Street.
Yeah.
Awesome. That guy, any others we can think of?
APA?
ATA? That was also by SFAI people? News to me, but yeah, makes sense.
1984.
Yeah. Awesome.
The Lexi question mark?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. I know there were a lot of SFAI related people that were there, showing there, etc., but I'm not sure about the person who started it. Anyway, this is just a long history. Maybe we could talk about why, but it's not. It's just worth noting there's just a lot less from CCA, right? I can name very few, you know. Flash is an incredible gallery that started by CCA students, and we love them dearly. But just historically, it's just SFAI was a fruitful place for the origin of various art spaces. How's the Seiko as a CCA like or SFAI related space? Then he went to he went to SFAI. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Clean snails in the chat.
Nico Colon? I can't remember.
We got a couple. Okay.
CCA.
Wait,
There
Will
we go.
Brown,
Okay.
Jordan may mention Queen's Nails Gallery. That's
There we
from the
go.
chat. Mhm.
Yeah, Leo as well.
Waiting Canals, absolutely.
Jetway.
Where was Jetway?
Jetway was on 16th in Valencia and then it goes to Market Street. Sabina Arts.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I feel like even if they weren't SFAI, it's like adjacent enough, you know, like because ESP and Sina Sena, like all those places were like SFAI adjacent.
Yeah. So these are just some of the many people from SFAI that have started spaces. I thought we would start and let people sort of introduce themselves. We're gonna go left, right. Tell us your name. Tell us when you went to SFAI and what you did there. whether it's what you ended up doing or what you were what your major was. And then tell us about like what you started once you were while you were there or after you were there. Start here.
History.
Yeah. Keep going.
Well, I'm Kathleen Quillian. I went to SFAI. I started in 1998 thinking I would get a second bachelor's degree, but decided not to do that and then ended up taking a year off and then getting into an NFA program. So I was there 2000 to 2003. I was accepted as a painter and I ended up on the opposite end in the new genres department and tried everything else in between. But once I got out of SFAI, I like immediately started volunteering at ATA. And so that's what got me on the path that I'm on now. The space that I started is called Shapeshifters Cinema, and it is just outside of it's technically in the Jack London Square district. But we started as a monthly series in 2012, and then we found our own space in 2019. Stumbled our way through the pandemic and held on by the skin of our fingernails, and we're still there. So that's me. Okay.
Yeah, maybe if we even scooch forward and
I think we've got a couple more minutes of this sun.
Okay.
It's just nice. It's a nice highlight to my forehead. So I'm Conrad Meyers. I was at SFAI from 2006 to 2008. And I went there for my MFA in sculpture. And I left making video installations, largely working with the new genres department and oddly the painting department, who I adored. And were very, very honest with their feedback. And in 2011, my partner Willis and I, who's wonderful and here in the audience, started Aggregate Space Gallery in West Oakland, and it survived in its original building for about 8 years. We had a nomadic year. We had a year off for the pandemic, and then came back and did 2 more years at a new location that fizzled out a little bit. But in the end, we held about 76 exhibitions, showed about 400 artists. 9 of them were my favorite thing in the world, which was our video open call shows, which absolutely. Thank you all for being here.
I'm Jordan Stein, and I would never wear sunglasses to a panel. But it's stream time, so cool. Thank you. I got an MFA at SFAI in 2005, and I had forgotten about it until I sat down right in this chair. The first space that I ever started was my graduate studio that I shared with a great artist named Jim Tanto. Some of you know. Yeah. And we did one show there. We shared like one of those larger spaces in the center of the bays down Dogpatch. And it was an open call show for undergrads. And we called our space L Bad. No collection. And the undergrads came over and had this like big party studio. It was great. Anyway, I started working as a curator at like legitimate institutions about halfway. And then I started a space called Will Brown in 2012 with the great artist Lindsay White and a guy called David Kaspers. I went through CCA graduate program. And we ran that on 24th Street in a space that was previously occupied by something called Queen's Nails. Like, did they go to SFAI?
Yes.
Not Queen.
Triple B.
No, Triple B. Triple B. Yeah, CCA rivals. And we ran that space for about 3 years, and then we did a show at SFAI. We sort of worked parasitically. We stopped paying rent to do our own shows, and it was a really fun experiment. And then in 2018, 17, I started a space called Cushion Works, which is still operational and not too far at 18th and South Van Ness in an active cushion and pillow making factory. We can talk more about it.
My name is Bob Linder. I went to the Art Institute for undergrad, graduated in 1998. I started in the painting department there, quickly nosedived out of that into new genres. And, you know, I found myself a maker all through undergrad and even into graduate school, but I had an interest in organizing exhibitions, and you know, I was fortunate enough to live in a couple of live works with some people like Will Rogan and Finn Sloyan, Brina Pecan, people that were very active in the community here during that time. And everybody was interested in trying to have exhibitions as much as possible. So even in this live work, we put on some video exhibitions, like one night, a lot of one night type things. And I think that really fueled the idea of trying to start a space. In 2003, I signed the lease on a building that Mission just past Cesar Chavez. At that time, it was still Army Street, and people were saying, you can't have space out there, it's outer Mission. But really, it's like not even as far as Blue Plate is. And I signed a lease on this studio building so we could have studios there, but there was a front space. And Julio Morales also went to the Art Institute. And friend of ours at the time, Elizabeth Mulholland, who now is a partner at Andrew Krebs, but at that time she just started working for Jack Hanley. Jack told her, you can't have a space of your own. And so she was like, I don't know what to do. We just signed a lease here, right? And I said, oh, Julio and I started talking about it. I was like, why don't we just do this together? We really did not even know each other. And it immediately we could tell it was a birth of a great relationship. And we did that from 2003 to 5. And then I moved to New York and came back to San Francisco 2010. And at that time, Leo's kept the lease and he decided he was going to give it up, but he wanted to do one last show there. And so we organized an exhibition with a lot of great people, Manuel Campo, Claire Fontaine, Wally Hendrick, with this whole Wally Hendrick piece on there. We just kind of like really were like, we should go for it and have the best show that we can have before the lease runs out. And as soon as that show was done, we decided we should run a lease and have exhibitions. And we did one more show there, which we can talk about later with Claire Fontaine, and then we had to give the lease up. And then later, 2015, actually probably 2014, Jonathan Runcio and I had a DJ evening that we did, I think twice a month for a whole year. And we turned it was at the Rock Bar here. We tried to be as creative as possible every single time we did it. And at some point after the year, that turned itself into this idea of having an exhibition space. And we found a space in Chinatown, and that was like the birth of the beginning of the Capital, which ran until 2019. We can talk through more of that later. Thank you.
My story, like I went to SFAI in '98 for undergrad, straight out of high school.
I remember when you started it.
Yeah, I remember you being you and Will being the cool guys in the library. Thing. I moved out here with my then girlfriend. We got 3 of us, my best friend and my girlfriend and myself, all got into SFAI based on like a portfolio day. And then we had to pick a major, and I picked new genres, but I'd never heard of such a thing. It just made sense that I want to do the new ones. So I'll do the new. I'll do new genres, which I love because I could show up to a critique with a painting or a performance or a video, and the teachers the professors I had were all very open to that. Which meant while I was at SFAI, I did just about everything what I could do, but I didn't graduate. I don't have any of those degrees. One day, I'm waiting for someone to give me an honorary degree. So if you know anything, I have in a book over there. I have an Ed Richet honorary degree from CCA, and I'm thinking of just crossing his name out.
Even graduating is like not graduating.
I know. Well,
We've got some blank diplomas.
yeah, there you go. It's like that's what I'm talking about. Because who knows anymore? Now these schools sort of dissolved. But after school, I did a couple of art projects with friends where, showing my own art, but really started focusing on music. But then even when I was doing music, it started to become more about like curating music nights, organizing nights with my friends so we could do what we wanted at various corners and clubs throughout the day. Flash forward, I met Jackie M, the other founder of Et al, when she was finishing curatorial studies at CCA, and kind of goaded her into curating with me at MacArthur v. Arthur, a space where an artist, Kevin Clark, had lived in San Francisco in a live work type situation and started a gallery there, felt it was overwhelming, moved to Oakland, and then immediately did the same thing. Opened a gallery in the front of his apartment there. There's a gallery, studio, and then a bedroom. And immediately then he was just overwhelmed. He was looking for a second curator, someone to do every other show. And we were just acquaintances at the time on social media. And I just reached out. I was like, no, I'm a curator. We'll do every other show. We got you. And I partially because I had an honest curiosity about it. Also because I started going to CCA and meeting people that I had known back when I was in school, like Margaret Tedesco, who recognized me and were kind of like open to me existing in the art world again. And also because Jackie, like post curatorial grad school, was looking for jobs elsewhere, and I didn't want her to move, so I helped her into curating with me. And we've been doing it in one form or another ever since starting that. Our probably first show was probably in 2011. So that's who we all are, at least. So I guess, yeah, I mean, you might have already answered this a little bit. So try to answer this, but if you have already answered answer the second part is, when did you know you would be more of a facilitator, or the facilitating would be a big part of what you do? And then in that, like, how did you find, or what do you think your particular voice is, like your interest in that role? Let's go the opposite order for the sake of confusion.
Great. I feel like a lot of these answers are like two-sided answers, but like it's expensive to be an artist. Really, it's like I mean, literally at some point I was like, God, you got a paper studio and storage and all this shit, and like I don't know. I started finding those certain aspects of the art world to be like annoying to me, like personally, and then also like there's other things like I can't make all the things I like, you know what I mean? Like, and I started noticing that as well. And like, I don't like being by myself in the studio. Like just like things like that as like understanding myself as like a creative type or something like that. Like I didn't want to be in the studio by myself. I didn't like that. All through grad school, I spent the time in everyone else's studio at Stanford. Like literally like, you'd be like, oh, I wonder what Margaret's doing. I wonder what Jason's doing. And it's like you go there and talk to them about the work. And I started to find that to be much more engaging, much more interesting. And then at some point, I hate to say this, but I do realize that like leaving San Francisco and going to another place and then coming back here is like a true like education. And I realized like going to New York and just living there for even 5 years and coming back here, I just felt like all you got to do is ask for things that you really want. Like, that's it. And before that, I didn't feel like you could do that. I feel like it's harder to get things that we really wanted from trying to organize things in San Francisco. And then at some point I was like, all you got to do is ask. And I realized how easy it kind of was to do that. And people wanted to show here, at least at that time. And, I started to just understand that that was something I was much more interested in. Organizing. And on top of that, like, storytelling to a certain degree, one way or another, like you could really craft like a narrative around other people's work. And I think I started to kind of understand like the depths of that much more than I felt about younger artists. So
How about you? About me? Going to SFAI was the greatest thing for a variety of reasons. But primarily for the first time in my life, I was around artists all the time. And one of the things that it took me a few years to discover is that I wasn't an artist. And it was a tough transition because I didn't know what else I was. But I loved artists and I had learned a lot from artists, and I made a lot of things that were ostensibly art. But I'm not certain that they were. And obviously I had, even when I was in school, I had some desire to share other people's work, even if they were unbreakable undergrad, which is ironically the show that I have up to Cushman's, but they're lovely. Long story. And one of the things that I really liked about artists is that it wasn't like an honorific. You could just be an artist. If you were an artist, you said you're an artist, that's it. And so despite the fact that I've worked as a curator for a couple of decades now, I still am not quite comfortable calling myself a curator. It feels overly professionalized. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to organize a space, if you want to do a show, if you just kind of do it, then that's it. I don't understand all the fusses. So it was always sort of intuitive to kind of get it going. And then as I started just started making space for myself to think more about art and write more about art and do more formal projects, even if I was uncomfortable with formalism, being a curator or a writer or organizer or whatever. And so the space that I have right now, Cushionworks, is it's odd because it is on the second floor of a cushion factory, and a lot of people who come in who are of a certain age or older say things like, "This is like old San Francisco," because it's kind of funky, and foam and feathers all over the place, and the ceiling, you can kind of dress it up or you can dress it down, and I love having a space like that, and I think, although I don't know, I'm trying to answer your question, that one thing a role that I do try to embody is to like run the institution on my own terms without it becoming too much of an institution, and to try to keep it artist-centric at all costs. Because I try to remember as often as I can why I started to do it in the first place. And I've worked at a number of larger institutions, a few institutions institutions tend to grow or they die. That's how capitalism works. So I have really tried to not grow as an institution, and it's kind of a perverted model of what it means to run a space, but it's the only thing I can think of to try to hold on to the reason why I wanted to do it in the first place. And it's kind of a miracle that the space is there, I'm able to do it. We can talk about those realities too, but later.
What was the question here?
Yeah, maybe your motivation to showing versus making art, what your project was.
Right, yeah. I went on a tangent when I was thinking about it because one of my biggest motivations was I had one solo show in my career at Queen's Nails in, I think, September 2010. So you probably just missed it.
Yeah.
And nobody came. And I remember being like, boy, I put a lot of work into this and I feel really good about it, but I don't have that other skill set that you need to be an artist, which is to have like a vast growing network to kind of entice people to be a part of it. But when I was thinking about that, I also started to think about all the other relationships. So like James Canton was in 2 aggregate films in art history. He was in a video show. He was in the Kunstgepäck show and you were in an animation show for sure. And Jackie helped participate. And I think you might have too when we did a survey show of all the spaces that had closed in Oakland. You remember that?
Maybe. Yeah.
So we had like a little space in the gallery from MacArthur B. Arthur. And I think that community was one of the driving forces of what we did. But also, I came from the East Coast. My partner came from kind of Midwest, and we grew up going to exhibitions in New York City and Chicago, et cetera. And then going to, like, our undergrads were in places where like big work was the work to make, that like you set your sights on this thing that was larger than human scale, produce that. And when we got to San Francisco, we found that at SFAI in this big way, people that were trying to take big risks and doing the same things. But in the gallery system, I think in part due to real estate and due to space constraints and resources, we weren't seeing a lot of that goal making itself effective at that scale. And so when we got our hands in this crazy building in West Oakland, which it's similar. We only planned to be for ourselves. We were like, we're going to hold this and make a thing. And maybe we'll have a little gallery in the corner. And when we started to work on it, we were like, this is a proper like museum gallery that we stumbled upon just with our own hands. And didn't curate the first two shows, but we did the third show and found it to be like one of the most rewarding experiences that we've ever went through. And the more we ceded control to other people and realized that they didn't have the same vision, the more we elevated that and held on to it ourselves and tried to train other people to kind of see that possibility that you can be the person that says yes to an artist when they propose something ridiculous and figure out how to elevate your resources and the resources of your community to help them do a thing that maybe wasn't possible for them to do alone. And I think I still find that valuable, although I'm a few years away from being involved in art projects.
Well, when I was a student at SFAI, I was like a deer in headlights. I was just so overwhelmed with like just so many great artists, so many great teachers, like the possibilities that you could possibly, make, whatever. I was just like completely overwhelmed and stunned. And I was like, man, I struggled. Anyone who was in school with me at the time, and I just sit through a critique of my work. I'm sorry, it was terrible work. Anyways, but I think it was the last year that I was in grad school in 2003 that Sabina Ott opened up the Swell Gallery.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be the curator of the first show at Swell Gallery. And so that was a really fun experience. And I really just kind of like went through my fellow students' studios when they weren't there, looked at their work and just sort of like formulated the show. And it was just a really fun experience. And okay, well, maybe this is what I want to do. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe I'm supposed to like not try to be the artist, but work with the artist. And yeah, and then after I was done with school, I started volunteering at ATA and I was a volunteer there for about 8 years, I think. And so I learned like everything I needed to know, I have to say, in jest about how not to run a gallery. God bless ATA, but it's like, it's a very like, I don't know, there's no one really in charge, but there's a lot to do. And so if you're willing to step up and do it, you will go down all kinds of rabbit holes. And anyway, I found community there, and I found I just really enjoy being around filmmakers and being around others who were working towards a similar goal. And so I don't know, I guess and then in the meantime, I sort of started to figure out what I wanted to say as an artist. So I am an artist. I finally found my vision. But now that I run my own space, it's kind of the struggle is how to find the time to make the work. But yeah, I don't know. It just sort of came organically. But the first time that I realized that I could be a facilitator was at SFAI. Yeah.
I think for myself, I've always been just eternally curious and a very voracious, like hunter of things. Whether it's as a kid, my mother would go to the library. She was a heavy reader. I would go to the art book section of the San Antonio, Texas Public Library, the really big public library, and I would just read every book or like flip through every single book. And same with music. I'm always like, ever since I was a little kid, I was always trying to find new music. Always like, I could get 2 college radio stations, both San Antonio's and Austin's, on my radio, And so I would even like call in request songs and make mixtapes and things. And I was just up late at night just trying to hear new things. And I still am constantly like looking for music every day. It's never done, you know, like I think for art or music or books, if your favorite things or the only things you care about are the things that you cared about when you were 18, you're below that. Like what's the point of being alive? Right? I think that so whether it's like DJing or organizing music nights, like there's always an opportunity to bring in, like to nest into the world I make more voices. And I think the curating has always been that opportunity. And like this building has a poetry nonprofit up there and a printer up there. And there's a different curator from New York curated this show in there. And we're always trying to like bring more voices to the community here in San Francisco, which has not nearly enough spaces, not nearly enough opportunities to show, to give a talk, to give a reading. So the curating, the running of the gallery has always been this opportunity to both like eternally justify keeping hunting, keeping looking, but also then to like continue to try to give space for other people's voices. We briefly had a gallery at Minnesota Street Projects, which was a tremendous disappointment. But we liked what we did there. We had one of the bigger spaces there, and every show we did there, we gave half the space away to a gallery from elsewhere. Because again, like there's just not enough stuff here. So we worked with Cooper Cole from Toronto, and Queer Thoughts from New York, and galleries from Mexico City and LA and whatever. We would just split the gallery if I really wanted to split it. They would curate half the show. And now that they weren't paying rent didn't mean that they didn't have to move the art here, right? Or they fly down to the show. Like it was free, but not free. None of this is free, right? But it was still like, again, like an opportunity to like nest into what we do even more. So like, the SF Art Book Fair is a joy for us because we're kind of, again, voracious lookers. So we want to look at all the books. And we are there hosted by Slash Gallery friends, right? So we'll be in a space in the front room that was set up as a weird library by the previous tenant there, selling books. But then like within that, we're still nesting other things, like the San Francisco Review of whatever, be selling their magazines and some merch, like we're being hosted, and then within our hosting, we host other things. And it's kind of typical of like what we're always trying to do. And I think that like it affects our kind of curatorial voice. It's like it's not a done conversation. We started with a small roster of artists, and some of those people still show with us. But we kept it that size because we wanted to always not to be beholden to always showing those same artists, to have the space open for new ideas and proposals. We get tons of and say yes to pretty often, actually. Let's see. I didn't want to myself ask another question. Do you guys have any questions that you might want to ask us before we let these fine folks ask questions? I don't want to keep everybody here all night. It's like we could talk logistics, which is such a nightmare. No, it's true.
Over the head.
Yeah.
If somebody asks, maybe.
Yeah.
You don't want to know.
I mean, like, what about like talking about the difficulty of having these spaces
The
here?
challenges, yeah.
Yeah, but I'll talk about it. I mean, and you're going to hear this if you go to any talk in the year 2026. The difficulty is money, like fundamentally. Like we love this big space that we stumbled into, but it's slowly but surely destroying any semblance of financial security I ever had. I mean, so this is a space run by two people who work full-time jobs. Like, you know, I'm nowhere. I'm not even a toe in like, I don't have a foot in the door of having this be our income by any means. Like this gets paid for, a lot of it out of pocket for the two of us just having jobs. So that's the biggest difficulty, has always been money, which is such a bummer because every other aspect we really enjoy, like working with artists. I think somebody mentioned this sort of letting artists, Conrad, you mentioned about the joy of like letting artists realize projects. It's like, it's the best. I mean, since we started the space, so many of our exhibitions have been as such that the artists, I meet them at the gallery. This is back when we were at a space in Chinatown. and I give them the keys on a Sunday, and then on the following Friday, I show up and I get to see the art show in person. Everything from that to me going to a gallery and picking things up, but like the amount of voice and input we have in a show being completely dictated by like the artist and what they want and need is fantastic. I know we love the space, but the money is a constant nightmare. What are some challenges running Shapeshifters? Work our way across.
Same money. It's kind of a boring answer, but it's true. Yeah, I mean, when we apply for grant funding and they ask for like profit and loss sheets, we always have to have a line item for like founders donations, which is like one of the biggest line items on that budget. It's just the reality of like running your own space. Yeah, and of course, like I said earlier, finding the time to make one's own work. But you know, it's I guess the positive aspects outweigh all the struggles and blood, sweat, and tears that we put into it. I mean, we've been doing this. My partner and I guess forgot to mention, it's my husband and I started Shapeshifters when I was pregnant with our first child, actually, which is a great time to start any project. We've had another child since then. Somehow we make it work. What was I saying?
We were talking about
Challenges.
money and your practice.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, the money, and the time, and but
Yeah. Well,
money.
what's so funny is that so I found myself very far from the arts, and there's this thing that shows up as a key performance indicator called lives positively impacted that matters to a great deal in many businesses. But to funders in the arts, it matters zero. They want to see books that even out. And so, you know, like we would offset our financial contributions by claiming we're donors because we would donate less money would need to show up on a P&L.
You also pay yourself.
Eventually,
I
would pay myself and give the money back so that it made our budget look larger, which is a good move, but you need to have cash first so that those deposits can be made and then reproduced. But like, so we ran for 4 years before. So we were about to give up after about 18 months. And then, what's that? Southern Exposure had the alternative exposure grant. And we applied for it and we were ready to close and we got $5,000. And we were like, oh, that's like 20% of our rent for the whole year. We gotta stay open. And so we stayed open for another year. And then at the end of that year, we made the decision to try to, if we got interns to do the day-to-day, we could like figure out how to make this work. And we got these wonderful interns, one of which is here, but I'm not going to call them out because they're going to be embarrassed. And then we put all of our efforts into building all articles of incorporation and building a board and applying to be a 501c3 and bringing in as many people as we could. And that was successful and we became a nonprofit, but then that offered new challenges like taxes and additional bureaucracy and additional paperwork. But we were like super committed and said, you know, like it was like, and then for every challenge, it was like, oh, we've met that, but now there's this new challenge. And I remember in 2016, we changed our password to all of our software to the NEA $20K. And then like, I think 2017, and then we didn't get it in 2017, and then we changed it to 2018 when we had to change that password. And then we got it in 2019. So we got an NEA grant in 2019. That was the same year we got a Warhol. And so, and like the Warhol grant was crazy because we got it alongside like the Asian Art Museum and the BAM PFA. and SF. And it was like, oh, well, holy moly, look what we managed to accomplish with nothing. And like, they knew we were working our books. So like, they're not stupid people. They knew that when they gave us $90,000 to spread out over 2 years, that they were going to pay for our full operations. And we just regranted. Again, I took a small stipend and gave it back. And we, like, consequences, we put our careers on hold. We didn't have kids. We missed the growth of nephews and nieces. We sacrificed some stuff. When we came out on the other side, we had to sue our landlords because they resulted in a lot of financial pain and other stuff. And now we don't really make our own. So in a way, it like fully burned us out. But also looking back on it, it was like an amazing experience. Like, and going back to that lives positively influenced. Hundreds of people. Like people that I run into now on the street remember the things that we got to work on. I don't know if I would trade it for anything for sure, but also it was pretty miserable in the moment. But the further we get away from it, the more wonderful it looks like it was.
Yeah, that's right. The short story is that my rent is really cheap. The slightly longer story, the most kind of as economical as possible, is that the cushion business is run by an amazing woman named Susan Schroeder, who went to CCAC. And she had some empty space on the second floor for a factory building. And she put up a flyer, an artist called Bryson Gill, who showed a triple bass, called, and the second floor has been taken over by artists for the last 15 or 20 years. And I used to have a studio, and I gave up the studio when I started working as a curator. And I came back to her in 2017, and I said I was working full time at this place called Caddis. I was a curator, and I said I'd like to have a room of my own, but it really doesn't need to be more than like 6 by 6 feet. I just want to show one thing, have a place to go, and I get to make decisions and not have meetings. And she sold me on a space that was much larger than I thought I needed or had the time to populate with people and art and ideas, but she made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So this woman, Susan, is like one of the great art patrons of the Bay Area. And and any artist who's in that building will tell you that. She doesn't own the building, sadly, but she's had the lease for a million years. The future is unwritten, or I guess it is written, we just haven't read it yet. But what am I trying to say? I stopped working at Caddis though in the pandemic, which made it harder to live. And I had a writing practice and was working as an independent curator. And the space, I had never given it a name or a website or regular hours. I thought that was charming, and it made it difficult for people to see the shows. And eventually, when I thought I really wanted to do my job, and if I was going through all this trouble to make these shows, especially from artists who no one had seen before, because that's sort of my yen is to try to find something. I'm desperate to find something that you haven't seen and to show it to you. And that it was stupid if people couldn't have a simple mechanism to get there. So I named my space Cushionworks after the business. It's called Cushionworks. It's downstairs. And we initially thought it was a nice idea. It had grown. It was pretty cumbersome for obvious reasons. And I started accidentally to sell our artwork. And it was a very strange period, because I had only worked in nonprofits, and I didn't understand how to talk to people with money. I didn't understand how to talk to other dealers. It's a really interesting breed of person. And there was something that was like really strange, because like sell all these paintings and my rent is so low that I was like, I can pay the rent for like 6 years as a result of this. Not that I could necessarily pay myself as much as I needed. And I made, over the course of, I don't know, maybe 8 months or something, decided I didn't want to do that. Like I didn't want to run for profit. space, I thought there'd be diminishing returns, like spiritually. So I'm fiscally sponsored, which means basically I'm under the umbrella of an existing nonprofit and raise money tax free. It goes through this, it's funneled through this organization. They take a cut and it comes to me.
Are you still selling things?
I tend to show artists who are not represented elsewhere. And so I don't want to deprive these artists of earning a little cheese. If someone wants to buy a thing, the prices tend to be rather modest. So I've kind of grown into this idea that I'm comfortable with that and it seems pretty clean. But I've also gone back to this collector class of people who's interested in buying work, primarily painting, and pitching them on investing in cushion works as a valuable asset for the community. And it works. I mean, it's not like gangbusters, but it's sustainable for now until you have to like go back to these people and sort of keep asking. But it's just me. I have some part-time support and have sort of just started writing and applying for grants and just got our first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Queens Mills was a hardcore project space. We never intended to sell anything there. It's also named after the nail salon next door. We really just wanted to utilize their signage. Again, kind of tried to do a sort of bad idea in the end. But Capital, was kind of like a bit of a different animal. I can't speak for, I will not speak for Jonathan about this, but like, I think that, I definitely wanted to take that project somewhat more serious. Like, we tried to be a for-profit gallery. I mean, I remember I was like telling somebody the story the other day about how Julio and I and Queens Nails, like, we did a conversation in a class like where Silverman was like, yeah, that's in a grad school. Like we were talking about our gallery at that point. And I thought that was really funny to think back on that. Now she's got the, like the monster gallery here in the city or whatever. But like I've always also been interested in like wanting to show things here that just aren't part of like the Bay Area fabric, like bringing things here from like elsewhere. And I feel like we really did a good job with that at Capitol. And the very first space was in Chinatown, and it was like a jewel box of a space. It had no desk to sit at, it didn't have a bathroom, it literally was like a very tiny room that you could look through a window from outside for the most part. And we put together like some pretty stunning shows in there. And that was like a real introduction for me to understand how the art world is like a pretty fucked place. It's like we got Sterling Ruby to make a sculpture for us that we included in an exhibition there. We had a collector come see it and not want to buy it from us because we were a tiny gallery that you had no infrastructure basically. And those were like moments of like, okay, well, this is like a problem. Like, how do we deal with this as a problem? And I think that some of my thoughts of how to deal with that was like, oh, we like do fairs, we expand, we try hard, we like work. And, both of us had jobs. We had real jobs at the time. And I was, when we started, both of us maybe were working at Ship Art. And, later I got this job at curating at 500 Cap Street, which was also a really great new opportunity. And that helped to kind of like, I don't know, bridge weird gaps between like that Capitol and Cap Street. And there was lots of great relationship buildings happening, but it trying to sell things and like, again, like I don't come from wealth. So like, that's a totally different kind of like group of people to deal with. And that takes a lot of skill to like manage those people. And like we did a lot of fairs and we lost a lot of money and we never paid ourselves, which I thought was like really abnormal, sort of like in terms of like the product, like we didn't want to try to make money for ourselves. We wanted it to kind of fall back into the business. But in the end, that was like was a real difficulty. I wouldn't like to go back and like change very much about it. But I think in the end, we had this space that was like stairs here that you access from Lilac back. And, it was a beautiful space. We spent a lot of money to build it out, and we did it until like 2019, and we put together some, excellent exhibitions there, and we crafted a lot of great relationships with artists and dealers and other galleries, people that I still kind of keep in touch with to today. And I feel like in a lot of ways those were really successful. And yeah. I really feel like in the end, none of this is very easy. And I thought about it a lot lately. I will probably end up having like a last conversation or whatever about like what people are doing now, but like, I'd love to open up another thing again here. Constantly people ask me this question, like, are you gonna open up another space? But it's, I don't even know who that is for. Like, I'd like it to be for like the community, but like, like I have like a child and like a family. It's like I can't like spend all this money opening another space here. I mean, no one wants to give you money to like open a space here. It's not like these kind of spaces like Christian Works. I feel like to try to like find that thing right now it's insanely difficult. I mean, the space that we're in right now, it's like this was the only Chelsea-esque space in San Francisco for the longest time, right? This was the nicest place, like in terms of the way that it looks, right? I mean, it's relative, but like this was the only space like that. Now it's like run by these guys, which is pretty fucking incredible. So I don't know. I mean, I think the loss of these schools is really tragic, and I'm really hoping that there's going to be a lot more like kind of younger kind of talent that's like put forth like exciting energy into like our community. So I'd like to support that right now as much as possible.
Well, maybe that's enough of us going around. I'm sure somebody has a question amongst, I don't know, there's also internet people, but we can start with the IRLs first. It was a quick hand up. Go for it.
Since you were in New York and came back and made it back here, could you tell me what brought you back and what were you searching for in New York, and mostly like what brought you back there?
Yeah, I remember I had a class that like David Ireland was at the Art Institute undergrad, and he was like, all of you guys should just get a camera and move to New York. It's kind of like this, Or, I don't think Doug ever said anything like this, but Paul was like, you guys should just go get your tuition money and buy a building. It's like stuff like that. Which honestly, it's really easy to look back on it and like, God, I wish I would have just bought a building. I would be fucking millionaire right now. But like I thought I would move to New York and be an artist. That's, I actually still had that kind of like desire at that point. I was like, I'm going to gamble and give it a go. And to be honest with you, I ended up working like an art handling job, and I was so crushed. I just like grinded out like for 5 years, and I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here right now. But I figured like the only other option was like you try to work at a gallery. And at that point, I did not want to do that. I just did not want to do that. Since then, I have worked at a gallery, and I somewhat enjoyed it too, for the most part. But and then I thought, what's a place that will let you kind of stumble and fall, and there's people all around you that like want to pick you back up. And it's really this place in a lot of ways. It's this place. The place wants to. Well, it like relishes in people's like kind of failures to a certain degree, because it's like, yeah, we're all struggling here to kind of like try to make the best out of like what we have. Things are a little bit different now. We're all kind of, the fabric is all connected to the art world in different ways than it used to be. And I find that to be interesting and enjoyable. That's why I came back here. I mean, I also left recently, went to LA for just about 4 years, came back again. It's like art space like a magnet.
Yeah, question.
I had a kind of self-indulgent question that came to mind when you were talking about college radio. We used to have a college radio station here in San Francisco, KUSF. And the University of San Francisco sold the frequency off so they could pay for the building fund to classical station. But there are all these, it was populated by a bunch of DJs who were all middle-aged and had families, and were all musicians themselves. So I was wondering, just on a purely selfish basis, that I would like to come to something having to do with music here at this particular gallery. If you ever thought of hosting a group of past KUSF DJs and getting them.
Nice. I'll say this to an extent it's the have you ever thought is kind of the opposite of how we do it. Like we have our own agendas, our own things that are really important to us. Like but then we have like a long-standing relationship with Small Press Traffic, for example. Their full archive is upstairs. They start to host readings here. I don't ask them, do you want to host a reading here? They go, hey, would you host this here? Does that make sense? Like, so things come to us all the time and we say yes a lot. But So
In other words, round up the DJs and then come to you.
Exactly, yeah, reach out. Back, right behind you first, I suppose. Right behind you.
I was curious. I'm glad that you mentioned swell gathering, and I was curious as to the impact or influence of student-run spaces at SFAI that might have influenced any of you over those years, whether it was still lifes, the Ram Gallery, the Diego Rivera Gallery, or perhaps the Manuel Walter Athletic Bean Gallery, and Tower Radio.
Do you know who ran there was a brief gallery called Quotidian Gallery? Who was this? I had a teacher who curated a bunch of a class, and we did a show there, and it was like a window, there was a video played in a window like above Macy's. You could see it from the men's Macy's store. And I think there were moments like that when I was a kid, or like where the professors would take us to give a reading at New Langton or something like this. Like those were the most inspirational moments as much as the spaces. But then, I mean, yeah, second floor projects was like a huge influence on us existing. So a bit, maybe anybody.
Spaces at Chestnut Street or at the SFAI
Student run spaces.
Spaces at SFAI.
I mean, I did the first show I technically curated was the one with my partner in the Diego with another person, and then we collaborated on a project. We were like, oh, this was really fun to make everything cohesive and to really think about space and how each work complemented each other's work and treating it like a commission space. It was maybe the first time we did that properly, right?
I think I think the Diego is actually mine as well. Like, I remember I got lumped into it was like the first time it was like Spike Milliken and someone else. And I remember we had a lot of discussions, and it was like very interesting to try to figure out and I made that strange Academy mural, if you remember that. And that was like very considered. The whole thing was like hyper considered, which is like kind of weird, was strange time for me. And then I did another show that was a little bit more organized with Will and Jim Cameron. We built this tunnel there. And then I remember actually JD Beltran did a solo-y type thing in there. And she built these walls, and one of the walls was left blank. And I remember being like, that's a real wasted opportunity. And so I put something on it in her show. She did not like, but I felt like that was just that moment of being like, well, looking to how to make it like, oh, these are missed opportunities. There's ways to make this work. There's ways to make this better. Like, I don't know. I feel like those were pretty significant beginning stages. Yeah.
Yeah, good question.
Yes. Actually, Jeff asked my question, but I have a little bit of a follow-up. So in thinking about so it seemed like the spaces that came before the arts spaces that came before you, at least sort of trickled through sideways in different ways, like the white there and so forth. And I'm wondering to what extent you have each archives or things that you might put together that would leave a trail in front of people to follow.
Someone sit right over there.
Yeah, I mean, we have a massive archive. Look, we didn't throw anything out, and we documented every show. Like maybe after the first year, they were documented like with a proper SOP. Like we took the same photos. We made sure we documented the cards. We have in our attic of our personal home, we have about how many, 7 or 8 massive containers full of like all the books that were donated to. Like we had a writer series where we produced 20 chapbooks, and so we have, I think, probably 10 of each of those 20 chapbooks. We at our 5-year mark, we did a book because we were really nervous about it. We were like perpetually nervous we were going to close at any moment, and kept looking for these opportunities to like reinvigorate us, but then also celebrate what we accomplished. And so I have 3 of these books that we did in 2016 that if anybody wants to take a look at, you could take a look at. So that was basically at our 52nd show, and so we kept going for a while after that. But like I shot, I think I'm gonna say like I shot like 40 shows in VR, and I've never seen it. Like I had this little shitty VR camera, and I would like systematically shoot the shows in virtual and like record it for a minute at a time, like at great time expense. Like it took me 3 hours to do that, and then I've never reopened them. They just exist on a 4 terabyte hard drive in our attic.
I was talking to Laney Geyer today, and she was telling me about a professor at SFAI I never heard of called Irene, something with a P.
Irene P. Wong.
Thank you. Yeah. And she said you wouldn't really know her work because she died right before digital cameras were invented. It's like, damn. And when we did Will Brown 2012, 2015, we left a pretty significant paper trail. Posters and tchotchkes and ephemera and artwork type of things. And there's like an awful lot of it. And then I left Chicago. So I left San Francisco to go to Chicago for a year to make an archival exhibition about the history of a place called the Renaissance Society, 100 years of existence. And I spent the entire year in this gray, acid-free archival boxes, and I made this show. And it was the best experience ever. And I came back and I started Cushion Works, and everything was digital. And I have left like 0 paper trail. Maybe because it's just me, or because the budget isn't possible to produce paper invitations or related ephemera or something. But I think right around then, 2014, 15, 16, there was a massive shift. And it makes me wonder how these spaces that were started after that will be remembered, if they're remembered at all, aside from whatever was posted online by them or by others. I think about the archivist of the future, and I don't understand how that works. It's just a profound paradigm shift. Anyway.
Yeah, I was at a fair in Paris, like pretty recently, and there was a gallery that had a stack of posters, like that probably like we would have made when we had the gallery, and people were just taking pictures of them and walking. And I was like pretty blown away by that. Like that's just people didn't want to like have a thing that they had to roll up or carry with them the rest of the fair exhibit or whatever. But yeah. You know, Queens Mills, I don't have any, I can't even find anything anymore. I think they even like hard drives are toast at this point. But we don't have the Capitol website anymore.
I think our DJ night has more material than the gallery.
Yeah, I think that was kind of purposeful though. Like, we were trying to do that.
Like, we had the copy night, so a lot of that got saved.
Yeah. I think later it became much more like documenting the exhibition. And it's like that became that's the trail. It's all of that instead. I mean, in some ways, the DJ night was the most fun part of that whole entire experience. Yeah.
Thinking about running a cinema, which is really hard to document. You can't really, I mean, I do, but a lot of it's like the backs of people's heads looking at a screen, or, like hand shots from the side. I have some good photographs, but they're not very well organized. But then I started thinking about Craig Baldwin and other cinema, and he just had maybe it just came down. It was up for a while, right outside of the SFAI archives, and I didn't get to see it, but I own probably like a third of those calendars, and I covet them, and they're in my whatever, my file drawer with all the other ephemera that I collect when I go to art shows. I love getting postcards and then putting them away for that future time when I can go through with my grandkids and say, I was there once and look at this and whatever. But we are not very good at creating that kind of paper ephemera because the attention span is online. You know, social media is going to be our archive of the future, sadly. But yeah, I don't know. We should start making calendars so we can have a show of our calendars outside. So. But yeah, running a cinema, it's all going to be online, really. Except for the film loops. Those are where I found it.
Explain.
Okay, well, every month we do a live event, sound and film event called the Do Over Series, where we have sound artists who improvising sound artists performing, and then they do one set just the music, and the second set we will jump in with film loops and like found like educational films or like films that we whatever got from the Prelinger archives or whatever, and just do all kinds of weird visual stuff. And so we make the film loops and we show them, and they have been piling up. And so that's essentially our archive right now, is the actual tangible like film loops, but not so much about the artists who are involved. It's kind of I don't know, an inside out archive. But come and see us every first Thursday.
I'll be quick. Our archive is scattershot. I take 80% of the photos, maybe 90 over the history of it all. And there are some early shows I have no idea. I really wish I could find pictures of. They're hiding on little thumb drives. I also didn't have a phone for the first probably 8 years of Elm. That didn't help. But there's some stuff, but not a lot of physical media. Another question there. But so
I'm an artist, and I actually think about people like you a lot because they're public figures in the community. And I was wondering if, as your projects have come and gone and occupy that different degrees, like I kind of make the position in cultural landscape in the if you experience yourself developing persona or identity markers, or I want to hear about the performative aspects of occupying the role of a public figure in psychology. Because that's interesting and exciting.
We're not politicians.
Yeah. Wait, I have a good answer to this.
Yeah.
So when you're like killing yourself to do this work, and somebody comes to your opening, like not knowing that you took the day off of work and literally were like killing yourself up until 5:45 for the 6 o'clock opening, and then like barely wiped your face down with like a face wipe so that you look reasonable when people show up, for them to like recognize you and start talking to you like you're important is really shocking. And especially if they are like, don't you remember me? Because I came to like a show maybe a year ago. We had like a 3-minute conversation. And like, and then you have to kind of like, oh, what show is it? And they're like, oh, I don't really remember, but you were talking about this. And that like, that's really shocking, because it's not like, I don't think any of us did any of this to that. And, but it made me a better public speaker and more nimble on my feet.
You kind of have to like talking to people. I think it would be, well, I think you have to like that. Or I think it would be a lot harder if you didn't. But I do remember Middle Ground was such a gonzo project. It didn't I certainly never felt like a public figure. But at Cushionworks, I do remember starting to have exhibitions that resembled real exhibitions, whatever that means. And people would come in and I would say the same thing. And I thought, that's weird. I don't want to do that. I'm a tour guide. You have to be this high to get on the ride. I need to switch this up. But then if you try to say something totally different, it's a disaster. There's nothing to say. So it's a weird call and response, halfway improvisational deal. It is really odd. And it is just funny you ask, because I don't think I've ever really talked about it. And, I remember going into Frankel Gallery when Frisch was working there, and she would always say, "What do you think?" And I was just think that was kind of intense. But then I understand after working there for like 25 years, you don't want to hear yourself talking all the time. That was the strat. And I think she was also genuinely interested in what other people have to say. But I do, that's so funny. I do feel it is an occupational hazard.
I was gonna say that I've always like really welcomed that, but what do you think? When I was at SFAI, I was like a rough looking individual, like young, messy, quasi homeless individual. But I would go to galleries 49 Geary, and there were people like Stephen Works would like come out and walk with me through the show, and we would like go through his inventory and just talk about work. And he was the same with Paula Engling. Yeah. They have no reason to give me any attention. Like I was in negative money. I was a drain on any aspect of that gallery. But they had like a genuine. These were galleries with a genuine love of the work and a love of how the work is received. And I lean more towards that than the having this feel. I always have wanted to just let people talk about what they think about it. I also did a lot of art fairs, and the bit of like the expectation that you talk about what school someone went to and what their parents were like or something as part of the selling point to selling a work of art. Just it doesn't work for me. There's no. So I have no interest. I have no interest in being the relayer of that data, if that makes sense. I don't mind learning it. But even as someone who speaks, when I do a studio visit, I'd much rather talk about movies. The work's there. We can talk about it. But like, I just want to know I want to meet a person as opposed to just be trapped in a sort of single lens of the things the person's made.
I just want to say real quickly that all these kinds of spaces are special because we all interact with whoever comes in. Yeah. There's no real backstage and that. So working in a more souped up curatorial field and you're at a desk in an office somewhere always seems so odd to me because talking to people is such a great thing. Welcoming them.
I feel similar, like can't speak for Jonathan again, but like we both love to talk about the work, and so it made it really easy to talk about the shows. And I didn't really ever feel like we had to like put ourselves on the piece. I just was working for this gallery in LA, Michael DeVinto, and I remember we were at, it was like one of the last fairs I was at before I left there. And I remember I got up and talked to somebody at the fair and he just goes, just like that. I mean, it's just go and just let. It's kind of like it was a good moment of like, yeah, you really also don't need to talk to everybody. It's like people just they want to look, see, and they're bound to ask a question or not.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna say that I tend to have this same conversation over and over again with people, and it always starts with, "So how long have you been here?" And like, "What do you do here? What do you show? What does experimental film mean?" I don't know. But I have my story, and I'm pretty good at telling it. I was just thinking about that when you're talking about sort of things over and over again. And then it always ends with, "Oh, I have something that you might like to show." Very, every so often someone will actually follow through. I'm like, hey, see, but yeah, but that may be because we are one of really two cinemas that show this kind of work. So I understand that. I mean, I like to say yes to artists. But also, you know, there is a lot that comes with that behind the scenes, and sometimes it can get pretty overwhelming. It's great, but it's okay.
We have a couple of questions from the Zoom people too, if you have time for that, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to just follow up with something that's a little less cynical. So we started doing artist talks, and it was absolutely my favorite thing in the world because it lent some of that context. So the work we were showing was largely from people that were underrepresented, maybe never had a solo show. So I think the vast majority of our solo shows were the first solo shows with that artist, and we're at a larger scale. And so it was always important to me as an organization that was not kind of seeking out to make money off of this or to commodify what was happening, to lend some other context to it. And so we started doing these artist talks, which we thought would be really fun. And it involved me usually just interviewing a person for an hour on Saturday morning. And we did it for maybe like the last 50 shows or something. And so a lot of those still exist on our websites and mostly YouTube and Vimeo. But it was really about being curious, right? Like putting yourself in that place where you're letting the artist take the conversation where they want to take it and lend whatever context they feel like is important to the work to it. And then having that exist as a supplement to the experience, right? So if people want to just receive the work without ever knowing that, they can. But if they want to seek that out, they can choose to include that as part of the experience. And so that was like a more public facing version of what we were trying to accomplish by like rounding out all the aspects of like the art experience.
Maybe we do people Zoom questions and I'll let everybody off the hook and you can all chat. Who we got from Zoom?
So I'm just going to read it off and you can pick the questions that fit. Claire Tom says, hi, thank you. Can you each tell a story about one of the favorite exhibits that you hosted and how that may have connected with the wider community? Then we have Christine Ancalmo, who asks, for anyone on the panel, was there a flashpoint moment where you realized that running a space was a part of your art practice rather than a sidecar to your practice? And then we have, what was the last one? Catherine, are you calling on the Zoom people? You want to ask yourself, right? But maybe those two first and then Catherine. Catherine wants to talk herself, but go ahead.
So 2 questions, then a question about questions from Zoom. We're gonna be here all night. I know. That's I'll let you guys talk about a show that really meant something to you, but keep it brief.
Talk about a show.
A show that really meant something to you. Oh, there was a bit about beauty there, I think, but we're gonna just a show that really was like kind of quintessentially Bob.
Let's see. We, I did a show at Queens Hills with Claire Fontaine. The gallery completely burnt down. That probably is one that will go down in the books forever. And then I would say at Capitol, we did this show with this artist that's now deceased, Martin Roth, and I think it was one of the most poetic exhibitions that we put together there. A Persian rug that he grew, grass grew up on it. I think there's an image of some of the stuff that for the duration of the exhibition. It was also kind of our last show at the little tiny space as we transitioned into the space up here. So it was kind of like a real, it was a perfect exhibition for that.
A really, really show that happened at Cushingworth with an artist who's no longer living, Nick Lutzbacher, who lived in Berkeley and moved to New York. And it was just after, it was like the beginning of the Trump thing. And she was known for being somewhat of an appropriationist, but by no means an explicitly political artist. And I asked her if she wanted to, she was the kind of artist who had a certain stature in the art world, but was certainly not above doing a show on the second floor of a cushion factory. And she sent me a picture of this huge, weird piece of paper coming out of her printer in her studio in New York with those funky scrawl. I couldn't really tell what it was. And I called her. She said it was, she'd taken Trump's signature, which, you know, is like a seismograph, and basically chopped and screwed it up. And she wanted to send me this tube with a really long version of that. She explained should run along the belt line of the entire space. So you're just completely surrounded by this wherever you look. Jigga, 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 backwards and forwards and upside down. And it was really, really intense. And it wasn't the kind of show that I was used to making at all, because it made people really upset. But that's where we were, and that's where we are. And she was sort of she was a totally special person, and sage-like in a lot of ways. So I think about that show a lot.
I am still presenting my favorite show. It's actually a series. It's a feminist film series. It's called Gravitational Lensing, Feminist Film Dialogues, which is something that Amy Reed, who's a filmmaker, and I came up with in 2024, I think, when she showed her film about women truck drivers. It's a documentary film. And it was just over an hour long, and she wanted to fill out the program with some shorter films, feminist, films that related to her film, generally feminist films that have something to do with trucking or work, labor. And so that whole process of putting that program together, we both really enjoyed, and we thought we wanted to do it more. And so we, threw a bunch of ideas around, and it ended up being this thing that's been going on for 2 years now, I think, 2.5 years now. We put an open call out for submissions, and we got about 350 in from around the world, and pared that down to about 100 plus. And so we've been, for the past 2 years, every month we'll put on a new, or screen a new program around, and each program is around a specific topic that is culled from the films that were submitted. The most recent one, I didn't have much sleep last night, so I'm blanking, but let's see. Oh, Queer, Joy, Friendship, and Community was the last one that we did. It happened to show the same time that the Frame Line Festival was happening, so they got more of the audience, but we did good, a small audience for that one. But so we're pairing those films with other films that are made by feminist filmmakers from across the space-time continuum, feminist space-time continuum, which is a phrase that I've used just because it seemed handy, and that seems to be something that is like in the books now. It's officially coined by us, the feminist space-time continuum. Anyway, it's just been an amazing process. She's getting her PhD in film and feminist studies, so she has her own working knowledge of feminist films generally from the 60s and 70s, like the OG feminist filmmakers. I'm more attuned to contemporary films, and so the two of us work really well together. And it's just been a really eye-opening experience to realize how many feminist filmmakers there are, how many women, non-binary, trans filmmakers there are who want their films shown and are not really getting them, not finding spaces to show them. So it's just been really eye-opening, and I've been learning a lot, and we still have about 7 or 8 programs to go if you're interested.
Oh, I can be quick. we did my favorite show that I wish I could do again was we had 9 video open calls, which I think we started in 2013 or 14. I don't quite remember, but we did them every January. And we would do an open call unthemed, and then do a blind jury to try to identify what pieces to pick. So we would eliminate the names and who did it, and then and just have a link, and we would make all the jurors watch all the videos and just rate them from 1 to 10. And then whatever ended up being the grouping at the top, we would try to curate an exhibition out of, like, year over year, like so consistently did like 15 out of the top 10 videos match some sort of thematic element. And we would inevitably, like, the best video that everybody agreed was the best thing wouldn't be in that category. And we would have to not put that in the show. But then we would curate the shows live, playing all at once. And like our space over the years had collected a series of video screens and projectors. And so we could show about 8 or 10 pieces at once. And we would choose them and curate them based on how they interacted with each other. And so sound of certain pieces would play at the same time as other pieces. Certain pieces would be secluded. Certain pieces would have headphones. And even if you wore the headphones, still sometimes hear the other pieces. And so we were very deliberate about how we wanted to build those relationships, because you were always experiencing at least 1 or 2 things at once, and the time scale was never aligned. And it was the absolute most fun thing to put together, and we always found wonderful discoveries. I guess doing that a whole lot.
I'll just say the names of the shows. We did a show with Andrew Sotak Ingersoll. He had a solo show in the basement of our Chinatown space, and then we briefly had the upstairs as well. He curated a group show that was just mind-boggling. All those artists are doing incredible things at institutions now. He's finishing at UCLA and will do incredible things at institutions. We've worked with so many people very young in their careers, very early in their careers, that have gone on to do great things, and we love 98% of the show they've done. Is there anything else? It's probably time for everybody to have a beer and relax, buy a book. Support, briefly, support the spaces that exist, and support the people making things. There are things coming and going, like some sort of a new CCA, some sort of a new SFAI, art and water. It's very easy to be charmed by the shiny baubles that the rich are throwing at us. The city is full of institutions like a Cushion Works, like a Root Division, like a SOX, like an et al. That need your support. Far more than those rich people projects need your support. So please, whatever you can do. And coming means a lot. So thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, everyone. You can all unmute yourself too. Thank you.